I woke up the next morning to find V exactly where I had left her. Those beautiful lips of hers had remained parted, and a thin trail of drool had escaped down her chin and spilled onto the pillow. I was about to wake her up to pick up where my dirty thoughts had left off the night before when my brow narrowed. There was a smattering of rusty flakes on the sheets. I followed the trail towards her hand and, after closely studying her knuckles, let out a sigh of both relief and frustration. Why the hell hadn't she washed that off? At least it wasn't hers this time, and it explained why she was still out like a rock. But whoever the blood had belonged to, they'd just bought me another load of laundry in my future. I could tell from the sunlight peeking around the doorframe it would be a beautiful day. After climbing out of bed, I grabbed some clothes and hurried to the shower. After undressing and tossing my worn garments into the washing machine, I stepped over the sill of the tub. I should have sensed something, that it was off, and turned the water on. Hot water was a prized commodity in our building, and it was around the time I was shaving my legs that I began to shiver. Cursing under my breath, I finished up and set my razor down next to the soap before shutting off the water and wrapping a towel around myself. The scent of freshly brewed coffee had filled the apartment by the time V finally emerged and sat down at the small breakfast bar dividing the kitchen from the living room. "Morning," she managed through a long yawn. "Morning." I slid a cup across the counter.
"Here you go."
V carefully raised the cup to her lips and tried to take a small sip, but still winced as she burned her tongue. "Long day yesterday?" I asked. "Yeah, you could say that. Spent most of the afternoon and evening on the south side of Pacifica." I raised my eyebrows. It hadn't simply been a long day for her. It had been a hard one, too. Yikes. What was the gig? After braving another sip of coffee, V set her cup down. She still looked tired. "The usual swipe and run job."
Some animals had swiped a corpo couple at a city center a week or so back.
Teens, a boy and a girl. The girl's parents called Wade for a fix after they kept changing the ransom. "Are they okay? The kids, I mean?" V shrugged. "They're alive." Both of them were raped. The boy had a ton of roids pushed into his system, and the girl was swimming in lace. I'd say from the looks of things, they were probably being prepped for an XBD if the ransom wasn't paid. To drive the point home to the parents, you know. My mouth had suddenly turned dry. I didn't know what was worse, the horror of what V had just described, or the casual way the words had spilled from her lips. Fuck. I looked back at V's stained knuckles. "Are you alright?" "Yep." V yawned again and stretched her arms. The snake tattoo that wrapped around her arm twisted with the movement, almost as if it were alive. "Things were going good until one of those fuckers got the drop on me. I guess they must have had cameras or something. Please don't tell me you didn't scope the place out first." I crossed my arms over my chest and tightened my jaw. Didn't she realize she was playing with fire by being so fucking careless all the time? And how was I gonna do that? V laughed as though it were no big deal. "The place was just another brick on the block. Besides, the payout was time-based. Not that it mattered. I still missed the fucking cutoff for another 1,000, that bastard." I shook my head. "Is an extra 1,000 gonna pay to get your arms and legs reset? Those animal fuckers could snap your bones like twigs." "I'm fine, Judy." He was built like a fucking tank, but the guy was just as dumb as one. He went straight for my arm, probably to break it, like you said, and must have forgot I had 2 of them. I cracked him as hard as I could on the temple. Pretty sure the fucker was out like a light before he hit the ground, but I laid into him for good measure. V tried to flex some of the soreness from her hand and seemed to finally notice the dried blood on her knuckles. More than good measure, I guess. V, I shook my head. "Why didn't you wash that shit off?" "I showered last night. I guess I must have just missed this." "Missed it? How could someone wash themselves off and forget to scrub the blood from their hands? It might not have even dried by then." "Gotta be more careful, V." "I know." "No, you don't know. I'm fucking serious. Getting a little tired of having to wash the sheets all the time or seeing you." "I said I know. Can you please not ride me first thing in the morning? You keep reminding me we need the eddies. What do you think I'm out there doing?" I wanted to lay into her, even knowing the heated argument that would ensue, but I sighed instead, hoping the angry tone behind it would be enough to express my disapproval. And V was right about one thing. We needed the money. If we were ever going to have a chance at packing up and getting the hell out of Night City for good, we needed to scrounge up every eddy we could get our hands on, and Merc work paid better than BD editing. But I pushed those thoughts to the back of my mind. There would be time to talk to V about it later, and I didn't want to spoil our whole day. Go wash that off, I said. V flashed a mock salute. Yes, ma'am. Besides, we gotta think about what we're gonna do today. I was thinking maybe we could head down to the mall and look at some new wreaths. V had been standing up when she suddenly froze like a deer in headlights, and my stomach sank when I realized what she was about to say. I'm sorry, Jude. I got another gig I need to run off to. I'll be in Rancho Coronado most of the day. Shit, this always seemed to happen. Every time we finally got our schedules to line up, something got in the way. I didn't give a shit about getting a new wreath. I couldn't even afford one if I wanted to. It had just been an excuse to spend some much-needed time together. I tried not to look out the window towards the gleaming sun and blue sky hanging over the city. Tried not to think about the thousands of other lucky couples who would be enjoying their day together. My throat tightened, stifling the scream that I wanted to burst forth from me. I smiled instead. It's all right. I get it. I wished V would stop looking at me like that. It wasn't making things any easier. I'm really sorry. I meant to tell you last night, but I couldn't stay up.
Stop apologizing.
You don't need to apologize. Like I said, I get it. Hopefully it's a great payday.
Sure as hell better be to leave me in the lurch like this. You'll owe me.
It is, considering it's a pretty low-risk job. I nodded. The account we shared never really seems to grow. Like a leaking ship, eddies would pour their way in before quickly draining right back out. A new transmission for my van had wiped out nearly 3 weeks of my wages. Munitions and gear V needed for her gigs never seemed to end. Rent, food, utilities, they just kept coming, one bill after another, punching new holes in the rickety ship we were trying to sail out of Night City. But still, V continued, I feel like crap now. Can I make it up to you? How about you get that ass of yours back in bed and let me nuke a few burritos to serve up to you?
Now that sounded like a much better apology, and my stomach had seemed to agree, judging from the loud growl it had made as soon as V had mentioned the word burritos.
Sounds like a plan, but you're not off the hook yet. I think you still got some making up you need to do later tonight. I threw in a wink for good measure and smiled at the way V's cheeks flushed before venturing back into the bedroom with my coffee in hand. Burrito rosados weren't anything to get excited about. It was true what they said, though. When you're hungry, anything tastes delicious. They were wonderful comfort food as well, and I was feeling much better by the time I devoured the second one and tossed the wrapper onto the floor. V had left for the day. It had taken some serious self-control to keep myself from wrapping my legs around when she tried to kiss me goodbye. I was toiling away on my hollow trying to kill time when it buzzed, and the reminder I'd set for myself last night flashed on the screen. Katie Elkram. What was I going to do with you? I tapped the screen to pull up my contacts. It took a lot of swiping and wading through names I hardly recognized, including a few that I didn't, to find Roxanne's number. It was only after I made the call that I suddenly felt guilty. It had been over a year since I had last talked with her, and the only reason I was going to do so now was to ask for a favor. Some chum I was. After a few rings, her face appeared on my HUD. Hey, Judy. Long time no see. Hey, Roxy. Long time indeed. How's biz? I winced as soon as the words left my mouth. How's biz? That has to be the worst way I'd ever kicked off a conversation. She was a doll. The biz was never good, even for someone as experienced as her. Fortunately, she didn't seem to notice or care. In fact, she was beaming, allowing me to see every freckle which marked her dark skin. She hadn't yet gotten that real skin job she'd wanted, but at least she'd finally done away with the blonde highlights and allowed her natural black color to shine. It was a much better look for her. Oh, you know, just same old shit. Still dealing with the claws running things and trying to keep my head down like always. How've you been? I'm doing alright. About the same as you. I kicked myself again. It wasn't like I was the one having some grimy corpo have his way with my body while I drifted off into oblivion for an hour of my life. Of course I was doing better than she was. Well, it's good to hear from you. What's up? I realize it's been a while since we last talked. I take it that things still busy at Clouds? Oh, you wouldn't fucking believe it. We've had 2 dolls quit in the last month and another got roughed up by a client. She won't be back until next week. Fuck. I don't know why I expected to hear something different. Sure, the dolls would let the program take over when they were with a client, but it was still prostitution. Every sore muscle or bad taste they experienced when they snapped out of their trance was a reminder of the perils they face in their line of work. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Fuck. Sorry to hear that. No worries. I'm getting time and a half at least. Oh, by the way, I don't think I ever told you, but I finally got scheduled for that real skin install. Just another month and all this, Roxanne waved her hands over her cheeks, will be gone. Nova, I remember you talking about that. You've been wanting to get that done for a long time. I have. Feels like forever. An awkward silence ensued. This conversation didn't seem to be going anywhere. I didn't know when the right time would be to bring up why I called, but it was becoming clear I needed to bite the bullet and spit it out. But just as I opened my mouth, Roxanne spoke up. Hey, I don't know what you're up to later, but if you got time, it would be great to see you again and catch up a little. If you want to, that is. Maybe we could hit up Velvet Underground later tonight. I heard they got a new mixer. I raised my brows. The sudden change of topic had been jarring. Velvet Underground? Last time I'd set foot in that dive, it had been years ago when I was dating Maiko. V and I both liked the ambiance at Lizzie's, or even Empress, where we knew the drinks weren't watered down and anything being passed around wouldn't be spiked. I glanced towards the kitchen. V had left her empty cup sitting on the counter. Again. Why not go out? It would be a good opportunity to talk things over without being obvious, and Roxanne could certainly be more amenable to the idea after a drink or two. Sure, why not? See you there at 8? Roxanne's eyes widened with delight. Fuck yeah! I'll see you there. I'm glad you called, Judy. I'm excited. Me too, I said. See you later. I smiled to myself as soon as she hung up. It felt good knowing I wouldn't be spending another evening alone. And Roxanne was right. It had been a long time since we'd caught up. A very long time. I tried to think back to the last time I had seen her. It had been shortly after Maiko's scheme to take over Clouds and from the Claws had unraveled. That had turned out to be a complete shit show, and V and I were both damned lucky to have walked out of there alive. But it had worked. We'd sent the Claws scampering with their tails tucked between their legs, and the dolls had taken charge of the house. It had felt like I'd scraped together some kind of justice for everything Evelyn had gone through. No, for a while at least. The rest of the day dragged on. After I'd finished the laundry and tidied up the place. Alright, tidying up was an overstatement. After I'd picked up most of the trash scattered across the floor and dusted a few things off, I tried to dive into some personal edits I'd been working on, but no matter what I did, I couldn't get into them. Finally, I gave up and tossed my wreath aside with a huff of frustration. The euphoria I'd felt when V had brought me breakfast had vanished. The apartment was eerily quiet, and I had nothing to do. I glanced at the time and felt a wave of relief wash over me when I saw it was past 3. The vast skyline of Night City was calling out to me as it always did, trying to lure me into its dizzying maze of streets and skyscrapers. Surely there was something adventurous and fun to be found out there, or at least a distraction or two that would help pass the time. I threw on a pair of jeans and a white tank top, lamenting that there were few things as liberating as spending an entire day lounging around in nothing more than your underwear, and slid my feet into a pair of suede boots that seemed to match my outfit, though I'd rarely worn them. With my jacket and keys in hand, I decided to head down to the Glen. There was a small strip mall only a couple of blocks away from the club I could wander around in to pass the time, and it was better than collecting dust here. Trying to cut through city center was the definition of a bad joke. In my haste to escape the apartment, I had forgotten the time and had run smack dab into a wall of rush hour traffic. For the better part of an hour, I inched along the roads, and all the while I had to contend with the usual stares.
No shit. It's a fucking rusted out Columbus with a rattling engine. I'm sorry I couldn't afford the latest Avenger or Excalibur fresh off the factory line with all the goddamn options.
Gritting my teeth, I forged ahead, block by block, mile by mile. Eventually, traffic thinned and the buildings shrank from the sky as I emerged from the heart of the city. The muscles in my forearms loosened as I turned the wheel and finally led my van towards the parking lot next to the mall. It wasn't much, just a narrow, one-story building stretching across the length of the street. Several neon signs lining the interior were missing letters or completely dark. I certainly wasn't about to find the latest model of Sweet Dreams wreaths that were due to hit the market in a place like this, but the storefronts offered a good mix of wares, and there was always something interesting to stumble across. I meandered along, occasionally stopping inside of a store that caught my eye. A black blouse with red lace woven in a hexagonal pattern beneath the bust was 30 eddies. A BD compilation with some interesting scenes was 50, and the latest Sugimoto model on display at the BD Shack was almost 2,000 eddies, more than the cost of my transmission. I envisioned myself leaving the malls with my hands full of bags, just itching with excitement to get home and tear them all open. Instead, I left empty-handed, as I knew I would. The sun was dipping below the horizon when I hopped back into my van and received another call from Roxanne. Hey, what's up? Hey, Jude, are you going to be here soon? Yep, just pulling out of the mall now. Give me 10 minutes and I'll be there. Nova, you want me to order something for you? I considered it for a moment. It had already been a long day and I could wait just a few more minutes before finally cutting loose. Nah, just save me a seat. See you soon. 10 minutes proved to be a wild exaggeration. I only needed to make a left on Division Street and venture a few blocks before I caught sight of a large sign towering over the road. A pair of purple V's, one stacked on top of the other, blazed against the night sky. Velvet Underground. I was surprised to see how many cars were in the lot, and it took me a while to find a parking space. Fortunately, there wasn't a line to get in. The last thing I wanted was to have to flash some skin to get past the bouncer. A pair of heavy glass doors slid open to reveal a dark hallway stretching ahead of me. The purple theme continued with thin bars of neon lining the ceiling. The entire floor glowed a similar color, lighting the way towards the coat check. A woman with fiery red hair stood behind the counter. Although she wore a respectful shirt that wasn't cut off too low, I could easily see the top of what appeared to be an extensive eagle tattoo spreading across her chest. She had just wrapped up with a couple who were making their way inside the club when she turned her attention to me. Good evening, love. Welcome to Velvet Underground. You can leave your jacket here and send a message to the number on the sign behind me when you're ready to leave. No weapons, no outside food or drinks. Be respectful of the performers. Keep your hands to yourself and keep your clothes on. Questions? Clothes on, huh? I joked. You wouldn't believe what we've had to deal with here, I'm sure. No questions. It was impressive. She'd recited the entire preamble flawlessly. The establishment had upped its game since the last time I'd been here. In fact, it was unrecognizable. After taking my coat, she turned back to me and gestured toward a pair of glass doors. Preem, head on in and enjoy your evening. I thanked her and was surprised when the doors pulled apart with a gentle hiss, revealing the lounge and bar. Heavy bass reverberated in my chest, though it wasn't so loud I couldn't hear myself think. The layout wasn't all that different from Lizzie's, but the addition of a second floor with a large VIP lounge overlooking the dance floor easily set it apart. Several clear columns stretched from the floor to the ceiling, each filled with streams of bubbles reflecting the neon lights outlining the walls. I began to search the bar for Roxanne, but couldn't spot her in the sea of faces. Judy! I turned towards the familiar face and spotted her sitting in a private lounge off to the side of the dance floor. Hey! Roxanne must have sprung some serious eddies on all of this. A private lounge? Hell, the bottle minimum alone would guarantee an expensive night out. Despite her complaining earlier, Clouds was clearly treating her well. I squeezed my way through the crowd and pulled Roxanne into a hug. There was an awkward moment when she held on to me for a moment longer than I expected, though I was glad to see she was happy to see me. It's so good to see you. Roxanne lifted a lock of my hair. Look what you did to your hair. It's so long and blue. I laughed. Well, you know me. Anything having to do with the ocean. But nah, just felt like it was time for something different. It looks good on you. Thanks. Yours looks preem also. I don't want to start the night off by telling you I told you so, but...
Roxanne ran a sheepish hand through her thick mane of hair.
You think? Definitely. So, you got us a lounge, huh? Yeah, I figured why not. It seemed like a good way to enjoy a night out without having to scream over everyone else. Come on, let's park it for a while. I took Roxanne's lead and stepped into the lounge. A large couch stretched along the walls in a semicircle, partially encircling the table in the middle. I sat down on the plush fabric, relieved to finally be off my feet, and browsed the extensive cocktail menu on the integrated table display. It was a good thing I hadn't splurged on anything earlier, judging from these prices. Our first round's already covered, Roxanne said. Stunned, I licked my lips at the variety of options suddenly available to me, suddenly feeling thirstier than I'd had just a few moments earlier. Fuck, this looks good. The Velvet Jellyfish. Vodka, organic blueberry, and lemon juice. Simple syrup with a splash of Pinot Noir on top. Go for it. I think I'm gonna go with a Rebel Mojito. I love anything with lime. Real lime, not that synthetic crap. I entered our order and glanced up at the dance floor. A man and woman were at opposite ends of the stage, scantily clad in leather garments that left nothing to the imagination as they swayed seductively to the beat. A small crowd was gathered around them. Roxanne must have seen my face. It's a bit much, I know. The Valentinos got booted out of here earlier in the year. Something having to do with their licenses not being in order. Whoever the owners are now, they've put some serious eddies into this place. Pretty nice, huh? It was. And I caught myself wishing V was sitting next to me and not Roxanne. If only she hadn't taken that gig. Yeah, it's pretty preem. A hell of a lot nicer than I remembered. Well, it's been a while. There was more to her words than she was letting on, but I quickly forgot about it when I caught sight of the server striding toward us, balancing a glowing tray on his hand. Here you go. 1 velvet jellyfish and 1 rebel mojito. I stared at the glass he'd set down in front of me. Unlike Roxanne's drink, which closely resembled a normal mojito, mine was glowing with a purple hue. God damn, it was so tempting to look at that my mouth had started to water. We raised our glasses. Cheers! I brought it to my lips and carefully tilted it back, preparing myself for whatever my taste buds were about to experience. The chilled liquid ran over my tongue and I swallowed. I lowered the glass, stopped, then raised it again and spilled more into my mouth. Good? I nodded, my mouth still full as I tried to swallow the rest. Fucking incredible. Roxanne laughed and took another drink from her own glass. It only took a few minutes of idle conversation before my glass became worryingly empty. I perused the menu, already knowing I would regret my actions in the morning. You want another? She asked. I'm thinking about it, trying to keep an eye on the bill. Don't worry about it, I'll cover it. I turned to Roxanne and studied her. The cocktail dress she wore was nice, but nothing fancy. Her earrings were simple studs, and the stones encased within them didn't gleam the way they would if they were true gemstones. I glanced at her hands and saw the worn-down cuticles. This was all an act. What's this all about, Roxanne? I asked. The words had barely left my mouth when Roxanne's shoulders slumped and her eyes filled with defeat. I'm that obvious, huh? I nodded, even though I didn't have a clue what she was talking about. Guess I'm that desperate, too. Fuck. I'm sorry, Judy. You don't need to apologize for nothing, Roxanne. Well, why don't you tell me what's going on? Tears suddenly spilled down her cheeks as her face scrunched up. I reached over to place a comforting hand on her shoulder. The clouds is fucking awful, she sobbed. I can't stay there anymore or I'm gonna go fucking crazy. Roxanne was shaking, and I was grateful for the soundproofing as I didn't want everyone gawking at her. But I couldn't help my own worries from bubbling to the surface as I rubbed her back, trying to soothe her. Whoa, slow down. Tell me what's going on. I'm sorry. Stop saying sorry. Just tell me what happened. Roxanne sniffled and wiped the tears from her eyes. It's not any one thing. Each day has just been getting worse and worse, and it's been like this for so fucking long, I don't think I can take it anymore. I felt a small stab of guilt as I handed her drink to her and encouraged her to take a sip. It wasn't the cure for whatever she was going through, but at least it would ease the symptoms. Sure enough, her muscles relaxed as a sigh of relief escaped her lips. When she spoke again, her voice was measured. Ever since the claws clamped down on us a couple years back, it's just been one bad thing after another. I mean, it's not like there's ever anything good happening there. You remember how it was. Sure, I agreed. But I wasn't having to go through all the shit you are. I was running the tech, that's all. It doesn't matter. You saw what was happening to us, how those fuckers treated the goods. I nodded. Clouds was nothing more than a glamorized whorehouse, and the best the dolls could hope for was to punch out at day's end with a few eddies in their pocket and no memory of what had happened to them. As for the worst that could happen...
I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner, Abby.
I pushed the thought away. Go on, Roxy. They're not keeping up with the expenses. Half of the fucking chips don't even work right anymore. The other day, a doll woke up in the middle of a session and was paralyzed because of a software glitch. Couldn't stop the client. It was fucking awful. Heat rushed to my cheeks. The doll chips tuned out the wearer and erased any memory of what the client did with them while they were active. When the session was over, the chip would turn off and the wearer would be none the wiser. Simple, versatile, and sure as hell not expensive to maintain. And we know they're not just watching us on camera anymore either, Roxanne continued. It's not uncommon for them to peek in when we're in a session. You sure they're not just checking up on the client? Making sure they're not getting too rough? Roxanne shook her head and took a long gulp, which nearly emptied her glass. We know, Judy. They'll linger around even after the client's gone. And if that's all they were doing, then fuck it. I'm a big girl and I know the game. But lately they've started garnishing wages for the dolls that aren't hitting their numbers. And it's not Eddie's they're interested in anymore. Oh, fuck. My head was spinning, and I didn't know if it was because of what Roxanne had revealed or how quickly I'd plowed through my drink. Most likely it was a mix of the two. Yeah, Roxanne lamented. I mean, even Woodman would only sample the goods when a new girl showed up looking for a job. Even he didn't consider us to be his own personal slaves. A chill shot up my spine at the mention of the former manager's name. I should have ordered a second drink before speaking up. I'm sorry, Roxanne. It's not your fault. I just wish we could have kept the place away from them when we took it over. I thought we'd spooked them off for good. Guess I should just be happy that I'm alive at all. I needed another drink. This was all my fault and I knew it. The dolls weren't going through all of this just because the owners had suddenly gotten hornier and couldn't keep it in their pants. It had to be retribution, revenge for nearly being pushed out the door by their own employees, and I'd been the one who encouraged them to push. Judy? Sorry, I was just thinking. I should have called you earlier and checked in on you. But I knew why I hadn't. Everyone saw me as strong and confident, so much so that I even had the nickname at Lizzie's, Punchin' Jude, that I'd earned after one of Susie's clients had gotten a little too close to me during a consultation. It was a reputation I wore like an old favorite shirt, allowing it to cover up the truth I'd always known about myself, that I was a fucking coward. After the claws had stormed back into clouds, I'd given up and blamed my failure on a bunch of things. I was diving into a new relationship with V. Work was keeping me busy, blah, blah, blah. They'd all been excuses. Bad ones, too. It's okay, Roxanne said. No, it's not. I feel like I got you all into this mess and just left you all to fend for yourselves. Fuck! Now it was Roxanne's turn to rest a comforting hand on my shoulder. You didn't, Judy. You tried to cut us loose, and we can be honest with each other. I could have quit any day between now and then. I haven't. I've chosen to stay there. That was true, and it wasn't my job to be some kind of glorified guardian angel swooping in to rescue everyone who needed help. But then why the fuck did I join the Mox in the first place? Why was I trying to help Katie, a girl I'd never even met before? Still, I should have called sooner. You called today, Jude. I was really glad that you did. A small smile spread across my lips, though it quickly faded. It was time I fessed up. Well, since you said we can be honest, I only called today because I came across some girl in a shady BD and I was hoping to get her off the streets. I'm pretty sure she'll end up like all those other actresses, sucked dry of any life, hooked on whatever shit she can afford and either ODing or finding herself raped and murdered in some alley. I thought you might be able to help her get into clowns and that it would be better. I'm sorry. Telling the brutal truth like this always made me feel like shit, but I was surprised when Roxanne's eyes didn't fill with hurt or disappointment. Instead, I saw something else behind them. What? I asked. All of this, she gestured towards the lounge. It was all a fucking ruse. I was hoping you might know a studio you could get me into. Thought you might have some connections, and I wanted to present myself a certain way, like an actress. Like I was better than what I really am. Sounds like there's no escape for me there either. A long silence passed between us as our mutual lies needled away at ourselves. And then it hit me like a rock. There was nothing I could do for that girl. I was a fucking gonk for even thinking I could make things better for her. Clouds would eat her up even faster than the streets would. Already her young face was starting to fade from my memory. Karen. No, that wasn't right. Shit. What the hell was her name? Katie. No, there had to be something I could do. But what? I was sitting in a nightclub with an early buzz, having just listened to a chum of mine tell me how her life was steadily falling apart, and the only reason I was even here was because I'd hoped to get something out of her. I kicked myself out of my apathy. That was exactly why Roxanne and the other dolls were in this position to begin with. I would think of something soon, and just needed to be more careful this time so I could come up with something foolproof. Besides, I couldn't think straight anyway. My tongue was too dry, and judging from the look on Roxanne's face, I knew hers was as well. I think we need another drink. Lots of drinks. Roxanne snorted, and for the first time since I sat down, I felt a little better. At least we'd cut through the bullshit. I turned my attention back to the menu. Judy? My eyes quickly found their way back to my previous selection. Nothing. Go ahead and order what you want. I'm good for now. I looked back at Roxanne, confused. It didn't take me long to realize what the problem was. We'll split it, Roxanne. I smiled, hoping to cool the burning heat rushing towards her cheeks. Don't worry about it. Roxanne nodded, clearly relieved. By the time we finished our second round, we'd finally moved off the subject of clouds and found our way to more social topics. How things were going at Lizzie's, what some of the other dolls were up to, the latest album from Us Cracks. It was the sort of mindless banter I always found distasteful when I overheard others laughing their asses off, but I was grateful for the distraction. It was only when the bartender set the third round on the table that I noticed Roxanne shuffling through her purse. When she pulled her hand free, she was holding a small metal cylinder, one nearly identical to my own. Roxanne twisted the cap off like it was second nature to her, revealing a funnel that narrowed to a thin point. Leaning over the table, she carefully tilted the cylinder over and a gold powder spilled out. She moved her hand in a slow, steady line, leaving a thin trail in its wake. Want a hit? I hated snorting dust after drinking. The high was always good, but the aftertaste was enough to make my lips curl. But Roxanne needed to escape tonight, and if I couldn't get her out of clouds, the least I could do was get her out of her own head for a few hours. Besides, it had been weeks since I last used. Let's do it. Roxanne smiled and laid down another line of dust on the table before twisting the top. The mechanism inside of the cylinder closed the funnel, revealing a small hole at the bottom to provide a clean airway. This shit's preem, Roxanne muttered. Gives you a great flow without that hard crash later. I nodded, though it sounded like she was regurgitating the same bullshit any dealer would say to make a sale. Roxanne knelt and brought her face close to the table. The business end of her inhaler hovered over the dust, and in one fluid motion, she inhaled deeply through her nose, leaving nothing but a faint residue on the table. She quickly tilted her head towards the ceiling and closed her eyes as a sigh of welcome relief escaped her. There was a glossiness to her gaze when she looked back at me. Just watching the drug work its way through her system was enough for me to feel the phantom sensation of getting high. It was only after I took a hit that I admitted to myself that Roxanne wasn't far off the mark. The dust went down easy, almost like liquid, with none of that rough scraping on my airway I always hated. I didn't know if my shit was either lower grade or just plain old, but I was definitely going to need to speak to Xander about upping his game. The next hour flew by. Roxanne opted for a fourth drink while I decided to switch to water instead. When her glass was nearly empty, I checked the time. You gotta run? Yeah. Hoping to see V tonight. Tell her I said hi, will you? I still think about her from time to time. I nodded, hiding the sad smile tugging away at my lips. They only met once, and there was almost no chance V remembered who Roxanne was. I turned back to the display to check the bill and grimaced while still feeling grateful I hadn't given in to any impulse buys earlier. There wasn't anything for me to hide. V wasn't much for banking, but still, our eddies were all going into the same spot, and I knew the couple of hours I'd just enjoyed had possibly cost her in blood. After we'd settled the bill, I'd said my goodbyes to Roxanne and promised to keep in touch. The drive home was much easier. I was still a little buzzed, but the dust that was surging through my veins helped to keep my eyes focused on the road. It was late, but if I hurried, I'd get to spend some time with V before we hit the sack. But my heart sank as I pulled into the parking lot and didn't see any sign of V's motorcycle. I hoped maybe I'd missed it, but those hopes were quickly dashed when I stepped inside of the apartment and was greeted by silence. I yanked my boots off and tossed my jacket onto the counter. With nothing else to do, I messaged V. Perhaps I could try to stay awake for her, as she often did for me if she might be home soon. While waiting for her reply, I changed into a shirt that didn't reek of booze and browsed my schedule for the following day. My eyes had nearly fallen shut when V responded. A pang of disappointment quickly followed. Sighing, I wished her a good night and forced myself to the bedroom. As I laid down, I caught sight of a small picture hanging above our bed.
I can't believe I let you talk me into this, Judy. I can't believe you let me talk you into this. Oh, fuck. Are we almost at the top? Nope. Not even close. Wait, what are you doing? Open your fucking eyes. Wait, fuck that. Tell them turn it off. Huh. You think they can hear us from up here? Here, I'll give a yell. She wants you to turn it off. See? Nothing. I fucking hate you so much. I love you too. Oh shit. Judy, hold my fucking hand. Nope. Hands in the air. It's gonna all be over in a minute. You'll see. No shit. We're almost there. Stop talking. Hang on, V. Oh shit. Fuck.
Even though I was lying in bed, I could still feel my stomach rise into my chest as the coaster plummeted along the tracks. The entire ride had been over in the blink of an eye, just like I'd told her it would be, but she had still hated the experience and the fact that I hadn't held her hand. But that wasn't what you did on a roller coaster. You were supposed to throw your hands into the air and enjoy the ride.
Quality, not quantity.
I repeated my mantra over and over in my head, trying to force truth into the words.